violence that we have seen down through the ages is as universal as life itself. It's been part and parcel of the evolutionary process between prey and predator and between members of the same species. Aggression and survival have been marked as partners. Man, by every standard known, rules as the most violently aggressive of all species. Man is the king of killers, so good at his trade that he may now be standing on the brink of self-destruction. Certainly, man's most frequent monuments to human achievement are monuments to war. In a certain sense, this is not surprising, for whenever man really seeks change from friend or foe, his most frequently used strategy is that of the heavy hand. Before our technology of violence became so fantastically effective, our aggressive nature did not pose the problem that it does today, when a decision to use force could destroy civilization as we now know it. Now, because of this fact, it is absolutely essential for our survival as a species that we better understand man's aggression and direct it toward more peaceful alternatives. But understanding the problem is only part of the solution. The fact is, we already understand many forms of aggression. The task now is to relay that information to individuals whose actions will affect the future survival of the species man. More and more often nowadays, I'm being asked to speak about what causes aggression. Most of my research has been in the area of animal behavior. And I talk about some of the causes of aggression in the animal laboratory, and I generalize this to the human situation. A lot of people ask, well, what's this got to do with human behavior? You're talking about animals in the laboratory, and we're interested in man's aggression against man. The laws of behavior that we get in an animal laboratory very much hold true for human behavior as well. Certainly, there's a long precedent for this. In medical research, probably not many of us would be alive if it hadn't been for much of the research that was first done on animals, and then later the findings from that produced information that has helped man to better survive. And this was done with animals, and the findings with animals hold true. We're not all that much different from animals. Generalizations can be made so that we're able to impose restrictions on animals then which allow us to make very exquisite observations of functional relationships between a given stimulus and a given response. These same kinds of relationships could be found with human beings, but we just can't restrict humans to that extent. If you're going to really seriously study aggressive behavior involves a lot of painful stimulation. And although we're willing to inflict a great deal of pain on human beings in non-experimental situations, call it a war, we're just not willing to do that in laboratory experiments. Who's going to volunteer? No one's going to go into an experiment where they know that extremes in pain are going to be programmed and they're going to have to experience them. And I really believe it's high time that we start paying close attention to the animal data. And a lot of the things that I'm talking about and want to talk about in the area of the causes and control of aggression are going to be based on animal data. But I believe that this data from the animal laboratory provides us with the basis for the best generalizations to how do we solve the problems of human aggression. We now know that man's aggression toward fellow man is not particularly adaptive, but it must have been some time in our evolutionary history, or else natural selection would have weeded aggressive behavior out of us. Throughout evolution, man's basic necessities have been supplied through aggression. As populations increased and food and shelter became less plentiful, aggression was the key to driving off members of rival tribes. Sexual pleasures were granted to those who were dominant, that is, the most aggressive, and thus aggressive behavior was perpetuated in still another way. Food gathering often depended upon an ability to hunt. Defense against predators depended upon an ability to fight or fend off attack. Today, our personal survival no longer depends upon an ability to physically dominate. Through our advanced technology, the dominance of the human species has long been established. Though recreational hunters do engage in forms of predatory behavior, they are motivated by sport, not survival. But there remains one form of aggression that is still threatening man's survival: intraspecies aggression, the aggression of man versus man. Now, if we're serious about trying to solve this problem, we will rely on basic research for the answers and applied research for their implementation. That's how we got to the moon. As a matter of fact, that's how we choose to anything we're serious about. When we attempt to find a cure for a disease, we first try to discover what causes it. If through basic research we are able to identify those conditions that produce aggression, we can arrange environments that are free of those conditions. Aversive environments are environments in which an organism would rather not be. They're always unpleasant and sometimes actually painful. These rats are in an aversive environment because every now and then both rats get shot in the feet. If an animal is placed in such an environment, he's very likely to try to escape or avoid, and if he can't escape or avoid, as you can see, the result is aggression. Monkeys have the same reaction to pain. They fight too. The old line about stubbing your toe and then kicking the table is based on some fact. When hurt, most animals will attack, even though the object of the attack is in no way related to the painful event. Some organisms, monkeys and men included, will attack inanimate objects. Now, this is particularly convenient for basic research purposes, because if something other than a live target is used to measure and quantify aggression, fewer animals are injured. Now, much of the aggression research in this laboratory is conducted with squirrel monkeys whose aggression is measured as an attack against a rubber hose. When a monkey is shocked in the tail, his environment is so aversive for him, so painful, that he will attack the rubber hose in front of him. In addition to that, the monkey is so intent on attacking something in response to the pain he's receiving that if the hose is not available for biting, he will actually work for the opportunity to get something to attack. He will go far out of his way to display aggression. Based on years of research, we now know that pain reliably produces aggression in almost all species, and other events besides pain can produce induced aggression. Now, the occurrence of bad things does tend to make any situation aversive, but so does the removal of good things. In some cases, it is difficult to determine whether a certain act of aggression is related to bad things happening or good things not happening. A man who kicks the vending machine may be mad because he lost his quarter, or mad because he didn't get the candy. In either case, environments that include painful or unpleasant events are aversive, and organisms would rather not be in them. If aversive environments are inescapable, then we should expect aggression. What types of environments are aversive and thus likely to produce aggression? Well, overpopulated environments certainly are. They crowd the organism into unpleasantness, and they require that some organisms miss some pleasant experiences, like enough food or shelter or privacy. Deprived environments, where the needs of the population are not sufficiently met, are aversive. In addition, environments that were originally neutral can become aversive through a process psychologists call conditioning. We all know of Pavlov, the Russian scientist, who demonstrated years ago that if a tone was paired or associated with the delivery of food, his dog subjects would salivate when they heard the tone, even before they could see any food. This is called classical or Pavlovian conditioning and explains many types of reactions to supposedly neutral events. With humans, many emotional reactions are formed in this way. Bad experiences often become associated with the place they occur, and good experiences become associated with where or with whom they occur. This type of classical conditioning is the explanation for much aggression that seems unprovoked. Just as surely as Pavlov's dog salivated to the sound of a tone that had been paired with food, they would have fought to the sound of a tone that had been paired with pain. If a dog has been hurt or teased by a particular child, he is likely to growl or attack any child, even when the attack is unprovoked. This sort of behavior in humans is very important because we have a particularly well-developed associative ability and become easily conditioned to react to stimuli that may have some remote painful associations, but in fact were originally quite neutral. Parallels are easy to draw. A dog once provoked by a child attacks any child. A soldier once booby-trapped by women and children in Vietnam is likely to respond in an aggressive manner to otherwise innocent women and children. In the same manner, there is nothing inherently emotion-producing about a man in a police uniform or a young person with long hair, but emotions are definitely produced. In many cases, aggression is produced too, because of pairing of good or bad experiences through classical conditioning. How have we come to respond aggressively to aversive environments? In evolutionary terms, it seems logical that painful occurrences in nature are almost exclusively inflicted by other animals. A sudden aggressive reaction to such pain, when flight is impossible, is adaptive, good survival behavior because it increases the probability that the attacking animal will go away. In aversive environments where good things are not forthcoming, aggression may have tended to thin out the population, thus increasing the possibility of enough good things to go around. In man, these same reactions take place, though they are no longer necessary or adaptive reactions, because we have more refined and socialized techniques available to us. Now that we've identified one form of aggression and the variables that produce it, we can search for methods to control it. One obvious way is to prevent aggression by eliminating aversive environments, but that's quite a chore. Once aggression has occurred, how do we control it then? How do we stop ongoing aggression? We humans have a favorite method for getting someone to stop doing something. It's called punishment. When a child misbehaves, punishment. When a human breaks society's laws, punishment. Even when a group of people question society's laws, punishment. How then do we attempt to control aggression? Punishment. But unless the punishment we employ is so severe as to be terminal, what are the chances that aggression can be stopped through the use of punishment? Back in the laboratory, several experiments have given us answers to this question. As in many laboratory experiments, the environment is made aversive by the scheduled delivery of painful tail shock to the monkey. When allowed to vent his aggression on the bite hose, the monkey appears relatively relaxed between the scheduled shocks. When we attempted to punish this aggression by shocking him twice as hard every time he bit the hose, we got two reactions. Some monkeys began to bite the hose even more. Though the punishment was introduced to stop such behavior, it actually made the environment even more aversive, thus producing more aggression. But monkeys aren't dumb, nor are they necessarily masochistic. And in a short period of time, each monkey stopped biting the hose and thus averted the punishing shock. None of the animals could be considered less aggressive, however. Instead of biting the hose, they bit their own hands, scratched their face, or assumed a slumped position characteristic of humans labeled psychotic or neurotic. Since it was hard to determine from this experiment whether or not punishment actually reduced aggression, another experiment was designed. A chamber was equipped with two hoses for monkeys to attack. The environment was made aversive, and then the favorite enemy was determined by which hose the monkey bit the most. When we tried to punish the monkey for attacking his favorite enemy, it was obvious that aggression was not suppressed. In fact, the monkey continued to bite the favorite enemy and increased his attack on the less favored one. By the time the first punishment session was completed, the monkey had bitten 10 times more than usual. Although eventually this heightened aggressive reaction to punishment was reduced, any time the monkey was likely to get punished for aggression against his favorite enemy, more aggression was directed toward his less favorite enemy. The implications are obvious.
If you're interested only in controlling one specific form of aggressive behavior, then punishment, in a certain narrow sense, does work. But if you're interested in making the organism generally less aggressive, punishment is not the answer. There certainly seems to be a chain of aggressive reactions, like the old story about the boss who yells at his worker. The worker then goes home and yells at his wife. She yells at the kids, and they take it out on the cat. Based on laboratory experimentation, we can conclude that one way not to control aggression is through the use of punishment. For punishment itself creates an aversive environment capable of producing further aggression. Now, one would maybe think that we could have picked up on this by observing the ineffectiveness of our riot control techniques. One way in which humans are distinguished from other animals is the degree to which their behavior is modified through learning. If any organism obtains something of value following a particular response, that response is more likely to occur again when a similar situation arises. Behavioral scientists call it operant conditioning. The thing of value can be the occurrence of something good or the removal of something bad. At any rate, a change for the better is likely to reinforce whatever the organism happened to be doing at the time. For example, if our friend at the candy machine does not get his candy, but instead simply loses his quarter, he may try kicking the machine. If somehow he then gets his candy or his quarter back, the next time a candy machine gyps him, you can bet he will try kicking again. This, by the way, is also a good example of how humans learn aggression. Since it isn't very practical to follow people around candy machines all day, laboratory experiments are used to study the same phenomenon of learned aggression. These two rats are fighting because one is attacking the other. Why? He's a mercenary rat. He's getting paid to do it. The wires leading into his brain are capable of carrying electrical current to the pleasure center, a very potent reward. When the rat attacks the other rat, he receives his payment, a short electrical impulse. Here's the same rat attacking a cat. This shows just how powerful reinforcement of behavior can be. Although not captured on film, the cat kindly illustrated the interaction between this type of learned aggression and aggression produced by aversive environments. When the mercenary rat got too good at his trade and made the cat's environment aversive by causing the cat a mild amount of pain, she ceased her peaceful coexistence strategy and terminated the annoying rat's mercenary life. The cat illustrated the only sure way punishment is capable of completely stopping one individual's aggression: capital punishment. The rat's aggression in this situation was learned, but the aversive environment it created for the cat caused an unlearned aggressive reaction in her. Learned aggression of the rat produced pain for the cat, and the pain produced her aggression. When learned aggression is displayed, the fact that another organism is likely to experience some pain makes the possibility for an interaction between pain-produced aggression and learned aggression very likely. We can identify many examples of how learned aggression interacts with aggression produced by aversive or painful environments. Hockey games are classic examples, where the cool, calculated aggression between two organized teams becomes an emotion-packed fistfight. With human beings, our advanced communication systems multiply this type of learned aggression. Our mercenary rat couldn't print in a newspaper that the way to obtain intracranial reinforcement is to attack other rats or cats, nor could he easily teach that behavior to his offspring.
We humans have an advantage. We can do both. Not only does the human environment directly reinforce aggression, but we then communicate this information very effectively to other individuals who model our behavior. In many tragic cases, our children. When one individual hijacks a plane and is transported to Cuba, and we circulate that information through news media, it is no big surprise when that form of aggression is imitated. The headlines might just as well read, "To obtain free flight to Cuba, hijack TWA." So humans with our vast communication systems can convey violent approaches to situations very effectively, even when we don't intend to or say the opposite. Although we put great stock in communication, the law of the land is still what you do, not what you say you do. If we talk of peace but behave otherwise, our talk will be modeled, but so will our behavior. Generation after generation has talked of the evils of violence, yet relied on violence exclusively when the situation got rough. We try to teach our children not to hit by spanking them if they do. In fact, what our behavior is teaching the child is, if you really want to control behavior, resort to force. With all this against us, how can we ever hope to control learned aggression? Well, we certainly can't punish it. That involves an aversive environment, which is likely to produce aggression. In addition, physical punishment is aggression. So we are employing the very strategy we were hoping to eliminate. What can be done? Since many of the laboratory studies made of aggression have originated with animal behavior, we might look to how animals control their aggression. Many species engage in tournament behavior. That is, they will assume threatening postures and often engage in physical combat. But usually dominance is established, and the bout ends without death to either combatant. Do we engage in tournaments? Of course, all varieties. We have shouting matches, we have football games, and we have our Olympics. But we also have war games, and we have our wars. Where do we start? Well, the problem is obviously complex, and certainly no overnight solution is possible. But there are some things we must do. I said in the beginning, this information on aggression and its causes must reach those people in control. Now, that's every one of us. Every individual has some control over other individuals. Maybe a parent, maybe a student, maybe an admiral, whoever. Any change has to start at an individual level. We have to start teaching and living nonviolence at all levels. We have to stop making each other's environments aversive, no matter what the cause. We have to stop glorifying violence for our children if we expect them to respond otherwise. We have to stop reinforcing aggression. We have to stop modeling aggression for following generations to imitate. We simply cannot teach young people that violence is not the way to obtain their objectives if we ourselves continually resort to the use of violence to obtain our objectives, and indeed often to control them. We can't say violence is bad and that it has no place in America and expect to be taken seriously if we daily support its use. We cannot fight for peace. Anytime a rock is thrown or a rocket launched in the name of peace, well, the inconsistency is beyond rationalization. Violence breeds violence. The human species is now in a unique position. Our social environment controls much more of our behavior than does our physical environment, and many reactions to events within the physical environment can be overcome through social control. But what if, through our daily lives and through our established social systems, we actually perpetuate behavior that is ultimately non-adaptive? Any parent who spanks a child is showing the child that violence is socially acceptable in some situations. And as long as violence is socially acceptable in some situations, it may be exhibited in others. I think we must begin to consider that we have been taking the wrong viewpoint on what is our most destructive form of behavior. Singular aggressive acts, such as dropping a bomb, are destructive. But we must realize that our own daily actions are ultimately doing more damage than any particular bomb ever did. Humans now have the ability and technology to override some basic aggressive reactions. But as long as these types of reactions are perpetuated through our social system, there is little hope for extended survival of the species. And as long as each of us relies on aggression to meet any ends, following generations will do the same. We continue to teach fellow men and following generations that aggression means survival. Aggression is no longer survival. It is death for us all. The child who today learns that aggression will win him a medal or accomplish any goal becomes the adult who may well be willing to light the final fuse.